So, yeah, well, as we've been going through this process, one of the things that has come up quite a bit is, oh, how's Yummy doing? In my first couple videos, I spoke about Yummy. This is Yummy, my beautiful husband. Yeah, so I thought it would be interesting, rather than me talk on his behalf, for him to, talk about, the experience, and kind of think through how this is also quite therapeutic for us. We've sat down a number of times at home and spoken about a few things. But again, everyone's like, oh, how's Yummy? How's Yummy? How's Yummy? And I'm like, guys handle things quite differently. So first and foremost, I do appreciate you being, open and vulnerable to do this with me. As I said, it is part of our healing process in terms of like being open and speaking about things. And after the first couple videos, so the Ordeal part 1 and part 2, a lot of the responses was like, oh my God, Shay, like, thank you for being open, thank you for being vulnerable. And it kind of dawned on me, like, when you see people come out on the other side of some things that have happened and it's been like a really dark moment, you only see the aftermath, you don't see them going through it. And I thought it would be good for us to show our strength and how we're dealing with it. It's been very difficult, and obviously we'll touch on some of those items and topics as well. But for those that are interested in terms of, I wonder what it's like, and we pray that nobody ever has to deal with what we have to deal with and everybody's kept safe, but it is something that happens in life. So yeah, I think while it happened, I think one of the first phone calls you got was from Lekon, my sister's husband, my brother-in-law, and it actually was like, that was actually quite sweet. It was like, he called you as a guy and was like, hey, Yummy, like, everybody's probably phoning Shay, saying how Shay, but sometimes people do forget, like, it's both of us that are going through it, so how is Yummy? So I start off with that, how are you? Like, how have you been coping with it? What are some of your thoughts in terms of where we're at today, our journey to come, the journey we've been on?
Okay. I'm very camera sharp, first. I'm not used to this. This is new to me. But if it defines a purpose, why not? Probably the way I want to go about it is to replay how we started from the phone call I received from Tammy. I think we were doing errands for Basira's wedding with Tosin, and I think I dropped Tosin off, and I was supposed to go
to get changed.
Yeah, go somewhere, I can't remember. And Tammy called and she was like, oh, Yummy, Shay's bleeding, can you get a red book? And I was like,
it's actually yellow book.
Was it yellow?
It was yellow. Red was when we was in Holland.
It's a book. So she gave a book. And I was like, that's not a good sign. Firstly, call the ambulance. And she was like, okay, yeah, they're calling the ambulance now. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll go and get the book from the house. South Ockenden to Romford was about, normal day driving takes about 15 minutes, but I think it took me less than 10 minutes to go and come back, because I was driving like a crazy person. A lot of things was going through my mind, like, why is she bleeding? So I got home, my sister, my brother and his fiancée were at home, because they came for the wedding, and they're like, oh, what's going on? Because they saw me barge into the house, and I didn't want to,
alarm.
Cause any alarm on us. I don't know if I just need to get Shay's book, because it's like she's going to labor. So I got her, drive like a crazy guy, and it's like everyone, like I don't know, but everyone just started giving me way. Maybe I think spiritual all the time, so perhaps it was sort of like a guide for me or an assistance, and everyone just started splitting, and I started just driving, and I go back to the hotel, and I saw 3 ambulances. And I was like, why are there 3 ambulances? It's not that serious. It should just be one, right? And I got in, and they said you were bleeding, and I saw this ambulance guys faffing, trying to decide, and I'm like, listen, just let's go to a hospital right now. Like, if it's Basildane, you decide to take us to, let's go. And we jumped on the ambulance and we got to Basildane. the whole journey process felt journey of how many minutes was like
between 23 to 25 minutes.
It felt like 5 hours.
It's long.
The excruciating pain you were going through, the instability of the ambulance in the box. So I was calm and I was prayerful because I've come to everything to God's hands and I'm a disciple of God and everything that happens will be stand by Him, as nothing will happen without Him stamping
or ordaining it.
Exactly, ordaining it. So we got to the hospital, right?
But wait, before we get to the hospital, in general, what was kind of going through your mind, and like, was it just?
To be honest, I never thought about the worst case scenario. All I just thought about you being safe, delivering the baby safely, and that's what I thought of. I never thought of there could ever be a situation where the worst could happen. Never thought of that, to be honest. Never crossed my mind. Then we got to Basildine, and I remember they put you on the bed, and these ladies came in and they were, checking for the heartbeat of the baby. And I could see the facial expression, like, okay, something is not right. What's going on? Something is not right.
This was when I was like chatting away with.
You were. I think you had too much gas already.
You
had some gas in the ambulance, right? Yeah. So next thing they say, then the lady now the nurse said that they can't feel the heartbeat of the baby, and as it stands, unfortunately, baby had passed. On hearing that, obviously, it was a very hard pill to swallow at that point in time. So it came as a blow, as a shock, and I didn't believe that. And in my mind, my spirituality came up, and I was like, okay, this is what was going through my mind. Like, okay, God, I talk to you and you answer me. And if you don't answer me at this point in time, you give me signs as to when, you would answer me. And I was like, this can't be happening. You didn't tell me this was going to be part of the plan, that we're going to lose this baby at this point in time. So I started questioning my creator. And you were in pain, and then tears came up. You couldn't believe it. You went bonkers, So I'm trying to deal with calming you down and also calming myself down. It's an experience I've never experienced such thing before. I've never been in that kind of situation before. So it was new. And I was like, no, this can't be happening, because I still felt like I was dreaming. Like, no, this is not real. This can't be happening. We can't, this baby has been fine all through. She's been smooth during the whole process of, from conception and everything, It's all been smooth, then while all of a sudden...
I mean, smooth to some extent, right? We had the breach element. I remember when I came home that time and I was like, oh, baby might be breached, and then he was like, no, don't worry, it'll be fine. Yeah. Like, you were always in that don't worry sort of state.
Yeah, when I mean smooth, I'm talking in comparison to Irabo.
Okay.
To the first baby. So that happened. I still did not believe myself. I still did not believe that, that was what was going on. And it's crazy, and, and now they said the next thing we need to do now is to get the baby out of you, because the baby cannot be inside you, because that would be another risk, another health hazard. So that was round 2. So there was not enough time to digest that news or emotions, because the focus now came on you to make sure that you're all right. Yeah, and it wasn't an easy ordeal. Obviously, you were in pain, so you were not really 100% aware of your environment. You were at some point, and then the gas and air were just making things more complicated.
So yeah, remember, is this the point when I was telling you to record it?
Yeah, and I didn't want to record it. Like, I was like, Well, talking about life and death matter, this woman is telling me to record something like kilo ko camera.
We actually have the recording.
Yeah, like kilo ko camera. What's going on? Like,
well, no, I wasn't necessarily saying record it from a video perspective. I was talking about the audio because I think it's good. It's best for us to pause and I can kind of give a bit of context here. So, obviously, I was taking gas and air for the pain, right? And for me, when I was taking the gas and air, it was the most it was when my mind was the clearest because I don't know, there was some element of it was alleviating the pain, but for me, it was like I was hearing from God. And it's weird because after I was like, is this what people feel when they're high? Like, do you know when you hear about all of these artists that they make the best tracks, whatever it is, when they're high? And I was like, it's weird. And it's. I remember I kept talking about the importance of communication, like God gets it, you know, he understands why this is happening. And then that was when I was talking about the triangle, you know, it was me, you, and then my relationship with God. And I kept like harping on it. I was like, and then remember there was a point where I was like, oh, everybody needs to stay quiet. And I was taking gas and air and I was like, God's going to download what the next step is and how we have a strategy. And I kept going, oh, it's important for us to have a strategy. And I was like, you want me to record this because at some point in time, I'm going to need to remember exactly what I was saying at that point in time because it was as if I was having, it was a dream, but I was seeing like a long-term vision, which it's even till today. And one of the things that I've really been struggling with is how do I have some form of purpose from her loss? And I think listening to those recordings and like having them has helped to some extent. Like, not that I'm trying to relive the ordeal, but I believe there must be something that comes out of it. And it was interesting that I was, like, a couple of days ago, I was reading, for some reason, like, John Legend and his wife, when they went through it in 2020, it came up into my mind, and I was reading her post. She did a blog, and it was funny, she went through exactly the same thing, where she was telling John to take pictures, that she needed the pictures, and I kept reading, and she also had a partial placenta rupture, and I was like, oh my God, like, why has this all of a sudden come into my mind? And she's had something similar, but obviously in her instance, they knew about it because she was on bed rest, whatever it is. I don't know the backstory to this. It's on Instagram. So you were thinking, this gas and air is making this girl crazy, stop it. But for me, I was like, I needed the gas and air to get clarity. And it was obviously helping with the pain.
That was why initially I was quite hesitant in recording, you know, what you were saying, because you were saying a lot of other stuff that, you know, was scary. I'm not really someone that gets scared of things, but that moment, that period was literally the scariest day of my life, you know, because you were saying certain things, you were, you know, say, oh, you're looking at the time, say, oh, 7 o'clock, oh, you're going to see light, then you're going to pass away, and I should take your hour. And in my mind, I'm like, two things was going on in my mind. Firstly, I was like, what the f-? Like, do you actually want to just leave everything and just go? And the second side of me was saying, no, this can't be real. This is gas and air. You're me. Put on your spiritual cap.
Well, that was...
Don't look at it with the normal eye.
At 7 p.m, I had stopped the gas and they had given me the injection, the perinatal. I've got.
I'm not going to refer. I'm saying 7 p.m. as an example. It was because you did it before then, because you were looking at the time like you were. I think initially it said 6 p.m. Then nothing happened 6 p.m. I suppose I wanted to start believing you, or like, no, I'm not going to believe you. Like, you're not going to pass away. Like, you know. Then, like I said, I put on my spirituality cap. Excuse me, and I started dissecting things, you know, and in the process, like, I dissect these things in my mind so as to get clarification and understanding of why certain things happen and why humans, you know, our comprehension is limited, you know. But to the best of my ability, I need to think in a certain way to understand certain things and to give myself that calmness. And what I thought was, I started comparing situations like, okay, this happened in the past, right? It could have been worse situation. We could have lost you. Another thing again, I was thinking, you know, this was not during, it was after it happened. Like, if they said the baby was breached, right? And for example, let's say, because you lost a lot of blood, and let's say the ambulance didn't take that much time, that much delay, and we got to the hospital on time, and they say, listen, you're bleeding, the only way is cesarean, right? And you go through that cesarean, and the enemy kicks the bucket from there. So there are a lot of things that could have happened, that was, due to grace and mercy of God, our Creator, that all these things were averted so as to keep you alive. Yeah, there could be sacrifices that we have to make as humans, but the end goal is to glorify God, right? So I was thinking, if that happened, to have a different conversation, you wouldn't be here right now making this video, right? It could be a situation where you go and also you're the mother and the child. I don't think I'll be able to bear that. I don't think I'll be able to recover from such a thing, right? So, hence why I always say, in every situation I give thanks that, you came out alive. Although we lost a baby, but you still came out alive, and I'm very grateful to God. It's a painful experience. It's not something I want to wish on my enemy, actually. I remember calling my mom, and I can't remember the last time I cried. Maybe the last time I cried was when I came out as a baby.
I can remember some other times, but
yeah, but
I do remember that because I remember there was a point where there was a point before you called your mum.
Yeah, I called my mom, and words could just not come up with my mouth, and I just bursting into tears. And also I think that's why with Delia has a special place in me, because she's seen me at my weakest point. And that was during that time. She saw me at that point. No one else has seen me. She saw me at that point, my weakest point. And that's why, I feel some kind of connection with Delia also. And Lex called to ask. I was very, and I appreciated that. And Tayo called too. But the old experience, I just can't. I try as much not to think about it. Which some people say, oh, it's not good, but everyone has their way of dealing with grief. And I think I'll do what works for me best. As long as it doesn't affect my family, then I'll do what I have to do. And part of that was, always trying to convert the negative to positive. So when the loss comes in, right, I try to cover it up with thanksgiving. Thanksgiving in the sense that I'm thankful that you are alive. I'm thankful that we have Irawo, right? And we have a family. We can still build and expand on our family as God has given us life, right? And one thing your prophet said,
my shepherd.
Yeah, what do you call him? Your shepherd said that always resonates in me was, what happens if she comes giving birth to her, and 2 years down the line we lose her? That'll be very unbearable. I don't know. I will cope with that. I know you'll pass out. I'll pass out too.
So let's explore that a little bit, because that's interesting. Because we hear different things, and I think one of those things is understanding everybody's perspective. So I think for me, loss is loss, no matter what stage.
But there are different levels.
There are different levels to loss. There are different levels. So, for example, you have people that have miscarriages at early stages. That is still loss. You have people that have stillbirths. It is still loss. You have people that knew or they're aware that their child was going to be ill, or they die at 3 months or 4 months. Loss is loss. And no matter, for me, when people say, I get it and I understand the concept in terms of how deep the pain would be, but it doesn't change the fact that that pain is still pain. That's how I see it, right? And I guess obviously, I get where people are coming from in terms of, it could have been worse. There is no it could have been worse, because it's almost to say, because you've lost a child earlier than it should have been or could have been, it's still not painful. It's still painful.
Yeah,
we're not going to get into a debate.
I don't agree with that, unfortunately, because I feel the different kinds of pains. There are different levels, not kinds, different levels. For example, now I pinch you, you feel that pain, right? This is different from me stabbing you. That's a different level of pain, right? So God forbid, imagine you've had this child up to 2 years old, you develop a relationship, personality, and all that, pictures, memories, and all of a sudden you wake up and they're not there anymore. It's a different kind of pain, baby.
Okay. We're not going to debate on that. It is a different type of pain,
It
but
is.
for me...
It's a stronger kind of pain.
Okay, so which kind of talks to how... You remember when we kind of just going with the things that we said we were going to talk about in terms of when it came to the burial, and we were talking about whether we should do it, whether we shouldn't do it. I think that perspective that you have kind of talks to the difference in terms of how I was seeing it. Because for me, she grew with me for 9 months, so I already had that relationship with her. Whereas with you, you're like, oh, you know, she passed away or she was born sleeping, so therefore we shouldn't do a big massive ceremony and we shouldn't really do a whole burial. And obviously there was a whole cultural influence, you know, when you were speaking to your mom and what my mom was saying, whatever it is. But that talks to the fact that for me, she was alive for 9 months. For you, you're like, oh well, I didn't really get to build that relationship with her to some extent. Do you remember? So we had to then compromise in terms of what we did for the burial.
Yeah, we weren't supposed to do that based on cultural, based on cultural standards. But you wanted that, and obviously I'm going to support you. And if you told me that was how you were going to get closure,
yeah, right? Which I did to some extent.
And I was like, okay, fine. If that's what you're good, if that's what needs to be done for you to have the closure, yeah. Culture can run sleep. This is state of mind. It's more important than culture. Right, and when I heard that we did it, it was a new experience for me, But like I said, yeah, we all deal with grief and pain differently, and apart from the baby loss, yeah, there was something else that that I experienced, and it was quite painful. And what I mean by that is what you went through during that whole time, the labor process, injecting you with needles. They're trying to get blood from you, trying to put this, trying to put that. The pain you were in, like, thank God I wore socks that day, because my feet was like this all through. Like, my feet was like this, but like, there's no how I'll be in this position, getting injected left, right, and center. I'll be like, listen, nurse, kill me, because I can't bear that pain.
Well, you had to pull your socks together, because remember after you had to give me the injections for 6 weeks. Yeah,
but I'm talking about that period. That on that bed, it was. I saw everything. I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep.
Because we stayed. I think that was one of the things.
Because I'm like, why would one human being go through so much pain and agony? So it was emotional for me, to be honest, because I'm like, that's my wife on the bed, going through all that pain, and there's nothing I can do. I felt powerless, and this is me. I always like to be in control of things. If I'm not in control of something, I don't want to get involved, right? And I'm here powerless, feeling like I feel like I was talking to God and God was ignoring me, and God wasn't listening to me. I'm like, God, where are you? I need you at this point in time. Why are you not listening to me? Why are you not with me? So those kind of questions, which I feel, it's a normal human encounter to feel those kind of emotions and, questioning when you're in such situations, because you feel like there's no God, whereas God is there. But you just feel like you've been abandoned and he's not listening to you, whereas it's the opposite. He's actually there, and in fact, he's even there the most. That's when he is actually present, without you realizing that. So it was quite a traumatic experience, and the fact that when the baby came out, and
you didn't hold her at the first point, did you?
I couldn't. The baby came out, and I saw the baby, and I don't know when I just couldn't hold my feet anymore. Like I felt like I didn't have legs.
That was when you sat down and you were doing this.
I didn't even sit down. I was on the floor.
Oh, I didn't see that. I remember seeing you sitting down on the side.
Yeah, I was on the floor. Then they lifted me to sit down on the mini bed. Then they lifted me. I couldn't feel my legs anymore. So words can describe how I was feeling, how I felt, because like to me, yeah, like okay, to you it was about the baby. I had two entities, that my mind was, rotating around. I was rotating about your welfare, keeping you safe, making sure that you're all right. You come out of this, and also the loss of the baby. So it was two. It was like two in one. Like two in one on my shoulder, which I've never experienced before, and it was yeah. It was,
so do you remember when we, a lot? The other thing that has come up quite a bit is Irawa, obviously our star girl, and how's she coping? Does she understand? I think that journey in itself has been interesting as well. So obviously she knew, and Ira has always been that kid that is very aware of her surroundings. Remember when she was first born, and she had jaundice, and the only way she could stay under the light was when we would hold her hands. So she's always been like very aware of her surroundings. Even when you and I are bickering, she's always like, "Mommy, Daddy," like she's in tune. So we have I've got videos and pictures of her like playing with my baby, and she'll be like, "Oh," like talking to my belly and all that stuff. So you went to visit her.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, you went to visit her because she was staying with Tiola and Johnny and those.
My mind was just going to, and I was like, I need to go and see her. Well, that was when Tiola came in.
And then you left.
Then I left, and I got there. I got to Tiola's, and she was playing with Eli and the cousins, and they had food on the floor. And she saw me. I was like, Daddy, come. Then she did like this. I should sit on the floor beside her. Then I did. Then she did like this on my face. Yeah, which she doesn't usually do. She did like this. Showed me some TLC. Then she took out some crisps from my pocket, and she was feeding me, right? And I would have burst into tears at that point in time, but I held it back. She knows there's something wrong. And I spent some time with her. She was quite calm. She was mellow. She was very touchy. She definitely knew something was up. And they say these kids, they sense these things even before us. It's just that they don't communicate it out. Probably that's why they can't talk till they reach certain age. But yeah, it was very emotional. But everything that was going through my head was just Thanksgiving. I'm down, my wife is down, family is down, it's a tough time, but in all, I'm still thankful. I still give thanks. Because
I remember when I got home with Irawa as well, because I think by the time I got home, it was something, I got back home on Wednesday, so it was like 3 days I hadn't seen it, and I remember she walked in, I remember I was sitting on the sofa and she was just like, she didn't come to me, I was like, oh my God, and then she sat down and then she warmed up, and then when she eventually came to me, she didn't touch my baby for like 2 days. No, she didn't. So it was only until like the third day or so, and she was like, oh, and she was like playing with my baby. She's like, oh, baby, and then I had to say to her like, oh, baby's not there anymore. Don't worry, another baby will come. Like, say bye, baby. So even up until like the other day, now I think she's starting to recognize and realize, because sometimes she'll wake up in the night, she's like, oh, mommy, I want baby. But I don't know if she's referring to Yano or she's referring to her Dolly, because she calls her Dolly baby as well. So then now I think she's at the stage where she's like, oh, mommy, baby, and she'll play with my belly, and then she'll go, oh, bye, baby. So now I think she understands Yano's not there anymore. But thank God, I think that's another thing to kind of be grateful for, because she was old enough to know that there was a baby in mummy's belly, but she's too young to understand the loss, sort of thing. So that's another thing where, some have said, oh, think about Irawa, try and stay strong for her and all that stuff. But the other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on was, how have you felt supported? Because obviously, for me, I've obviously started counselling and therapy. People call me, people are always checking in on you, say, oh, how's Yummy? And I think some people do call, you got your family and friends that call and check in on you. But just in general, in terms of support, how have you felt supported?
That I can't really weigh, because I'm not someone that grew up to rely on support. So if support is not there, I don't really feel the
What do you mean?
like yeah, support is
Your support
good.
system.
Yeah, support. I mean, I've got my wife, I've got my family. You know, that's what I need the most.
Okay, but then obviously, you know, like obviously with the emotions and stuff, and I said it in some of the other things in terms of, I obviously am very emotional. You know, I cry a lot, but you don't like seeing me upset and cry. So there will be times I'm like, oh, do you know, I'm going out. Instead of me to upset Yummy, let me go out and I'll sit in the car or Sainsbury's.
No.
You don't like seeing me upset, so I would.
I don't like seeing you upset. Doesn't mean that when you're upset, it gets me upset.
No, okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not
because
saying
you just
that.
said I don't want to upset you. I mean, with my emotions.
Well, not like because I don't want. If like I don't want. I know we deal with grief differently, is what I'm saying, right? You're that type of person that my understanding about you is when something comes into your mind, you have your way of dealing with it. You find a way to shut it down. Like, I don't know when you're thinking about it. I'm always the one that's having to bring up, like, oh, babes, are you okay? Like, do you think about her? Because if I don't bring her up, you don't bring her up, right? So if you see me constantly crying, you will be like, oh, you know. So that's what I mean, but I don't want to upset you and kind of make you constantly be remembering her in that kind of front.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but you know, like you said already,
we do talk about it.
Yeah, people grieve differently. You're very emotional. You're emotional to the brain, like
here we go,
to the brain, like overflowing, cup overflowing. You know,
and
sometimes I'm like, listen, lady, you are a grown ass woman. You're somebody's mother. Stop wailing around. You know, they're like you're 12-year-old or something like that. But
that's not in regards to Yano. That's just in general.
That's in general. Now to not top it up, something like this. It's like, whoa. You know, it's like a burning fire already. Then you're not adding petrol to it. That makes the emotion.
I mean, but
you know,
you say what we'd like to say.
More flesh.
But then you understand the reason why, because of the heightened emotions, right? That is the reason why I do what I do.
Which I respect and understand that because, you know, I believe time heals everything. Everything's with time. Just a matter of, you know, we humans, it's just a matter of perseverance, you know, and going through that period until, you know, we totally overcome it. And like we're overcomers. Every challenge that comes our way, to the glory of God, we overcome it.
It's interesting. Do you remember when we set our wedding hashtag as overcomers? I mean, it's interesting how that has been our mantra to some extent. Obviously, the challenges of marriage, challenges of life in general, and now this. It's almost like sometimes I do think that when we said, because I can't, how did it overcome? I remember how overcomers came. It was at my mum's church, and he's like, "Don't worry, we'll overcome." And it was like, "Oh, that's going to be a hashtag." It was ha 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 ha, because we were going through what we were going through at that time. And it's almost like whenever you say that, I do remember. I kind of do flash back to our wedding day and the things that we've been through. And I do joke sometimes. I know I talk to some of my good friends. I'm like, man, some of the things that Yummy and I have gone through, some couples will never survive it. And they've been together for like 10, 15 years. And I do pray that God obviously preserves our lives and keeps giving us the strength to kind of get through it. But it's interesting how, like, in terms of like coping mechanisms, we have very different coping mechanisms. And like one of the things that now that we are trying to look into is like couples therapy of how to overcome this, making sure like we're communicating, because I'm going through my own individual therapy, and when I've spoken about that to people, they're like, oh, Yami's actually open for therapy.
Well, funny enough, my dad brought it up last week. It was like, are you guys going for therapy, like going to see a doctor and stuff? Like, yeah, we'll start that. You know, more in particular, Shay. And I could go for therapy too. I'm open to it. You know, as long as, you know, it's all about getting a solution. So yes, obviously, and we've done therapy for other things too, not just counselling.
But it's interesting that you say that, because
although you made me pay some money for that for that counselling guy, that I felt like I could have done a better job than him. Hopefully, he doesn't see this video.
That's why whatever. But I say all of that to say, like, one of the things that has also been quite evident for me is the lack of conversation around this in the black community. Like, I've gone to Sam's and Tommy's, and there are all of these other websites that are dealing with these topics, and I personally, and obviously I've got a family member that has a whole organisation around this, but other than that, like in the UK, do you feel like if I wasn't around, right, or you were having a bad day, would you know who to reach out to get support outside of what we've spoken about in terms of family and friends, and your support system? Do you feel there are external organisations that you are aware about that you can get support from?
No, like I said, I've always grown up, dealing with my own stuff myself. I mean, I started living more than age of 16,
So the answer is no. So you wouldn't necessarily go to those type. But is there a particular reason why? Is that just because of upbringing, or is it because it's an uncomfortable thing to deal with?
No, it's not comfortable. It's just how I've been built and engineered.
So it's a cultural thing then, because if
I wouldn't say it's a cultural thing.
It's an upbringing thing.
Or I would say it's more like what's the word now? Not really upbringing, because growing up, if you have issues, you can speak to your parents or you speak to your older ones, right? So that's different. So it's more of what I've been used to since I started living independently. Like, if I have issues, I don't seek third party support.
But is there a reason why?
No, because it's never just thought about it. I've just always dealt with stuff myself.
I find that interesting.
I've always dealt with stuff myself, and eventually I get solution. Right, so I've never, and funny enough, you said this, a couple of weeks ago, when I was in the garden having my own thinking time, and I was like, I was looking at my phone, and I was like, for example, now let's say I'm having this issue, I need a third party view on this, like, I don't think there's anyone I can talk to regarding that. A lot of these people on my phone, I don't have that kind of relationship with. Like
this is a topic to unpick in general, because I always find with men, and this is again we're kind of going off topic in terms of like Iano, but I thought when it comes to grief, right, to your point, is it because you don't have a relationship with those people that's the reason why you can't talk to them, or is it just talking to them with any type of topic?
I mean, I talk to them
in depth in terms of how you're truly feeling, because I don't know as your wife. I
don't even know how I'm truly feeling. So if I don't even know that, how will I be able to speak to somebody else about it?
And that's what I think, and that's where I believe it's interesting how men are built. How some men are like our dear director. I feel he will eventually be able to buckle down. Some guys are more in tune with how they're feeling than others. You're one of those ones.
Sometimes when we have arguments and you just want to talk, I'm like, listen, can't you just let it go? Let it just dilute in the air and forget about it and move on. Like, there's some things that, just let it go. Like, but you want to talk and talk and talk and talk about it, and that is not my style. But obviously, you get into marriage, and marriage is about compromise, so you need to start meeting the middle grounds. So I have to start developing myself on how to start speaking. When I don't want to talk.
So with Iano and grief, do you feel you're dealing with it? Let's put aside the therapy and the counselling that we are starting, right? Do you feel you're dealing with it, or do you feel you're suppressing it?
I think I'm dealing with it by suppressing it.
That means you're not dealing with it.
Like I said, we were engineered differently. Now, so what I mean by that is, sometimes it comes to my head, when I go for my walks, it comes to my head. Looking at the picture comes to my head, and I feel that hot flush again, But then again, I try to convert the negative to the positive by being thankful that, right, she is still here, we still have a bright future, we have a beautiful daughter, mom's there, more coming, more on the way, it could have been worse. These are my affirmations that I give to myself. Okay. And this is how I feel, I believe I deal with it.
So is that your inspiration?
That's my inspiration, right?
So that's what you want to talk about, is it?
Yeah, and Yeah, exactly. You know, because a lot of things could have been at play at that day, on that day rather. You know, and that's why I'm thankful to God because, like I always say, it could have been worse.